How did you meet Ryan though?
Instagram.
Man, like before you pulled up to Minneapolis for a minute, you know?
Yeah, dude. Like, there's this other photographer, visual artist named Ktic, and he does like incredible like both landscape and portrait work, where it's just like these really saturated images, but natural. Like, it's incredible stuff. So I've been a fan of his shit for like before the pandemic hit for about a year, and then him and Ryan were on Instagram Live late one night. I was in India, so it was daytime over there. But I was just like scrolling through my Instagram Lives, clicked on that shit, and Ryan was just playing this crazy mix. I didn't know what it was, but it sounded insane. So I started following him. No clue who he was, but the shit sounded fire.
So you didn't even know like the background?
Nothing, yeah. And then he started following me. I just posted up this cover of Superstar with their originally the Carpenters. He dug that, and then we just started talking on DM, and he's like, "Yo, come to Minneapolis." I pulled up the first day. We grabbed breakfast, and we were just basically getting to know each other, but telling each other like asking questions. Like I was like learning more about him and about me and shit. You know? It's like normal human shit, but like then you uncover. And then he introduced me to Justin that day.
Same day?
Yeah, right after breakfast. We got breakfast down the street from Justin's spot.
And you knew about Justin though?
Oh yeah, I've been a fan for a minute.
Yeah. Did you kind of have that moment internally, like?
Oh, for sure. Yeah, definitely. But he was super chill, like no airs, none of the like. And you know, he exists in like a pretty rarefied space in terms of his cultural impact.
Yeah.
But it's like there's none of that shit. It was just all. And I was pulling up with his like close homie. You know what I mean? Like him and Ryan known each other for like a long time.
Yeah.
So yeah, then we started making music.
Same day?
Yeah, that day. We like dropped my shit off at the hotel. I rested for maybe an hour, then went to Ryan's studio, which is the gnarliest spot in the world.
Yeah. I mean, you're usually like freeform when you're creating, but when you're in that room for the first time, and now you're like, oh, Justin's also here, and you're producing. Was there like a tiny part of you that's like, yo, this is happening right now, or was it just
not
like,
when it was happening? When it was happening, everyone was just so like locked in and present. No one were like. It very quickly turned into like it didn't matter who was who, just like what we were doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it wasn't like reputation or everyone was just like having a good ass time.
Yeah.
And that room is special in that way. You walk in there, like all the bullshit just disappears, like the ego and all that shit goes away. It's just like joyful, man. Like it was tail end of pandemic. No one had gotten to do that in a while.
But how'd you guys pump out 2 days, 24?
3 days, 30 ideas.
3 days, 30 ideas.
Yeah.
So how much time goes into each idea?
Initial is like we started, let's say like 4 p.m. on the first day, and we went until like 1 or 2, maybe 3 in the morning.
Yeah.
And that was basically the flow for each day out there. One of the days, the second day we started earlier, like 2. That's the day that Justin joined. He played acoustic. Then Chris Bearden played bass. Aaron Baum, who's in the band, played keys, like synth. And then someone else was there. Yeah, Alex Nutter. He was there with his like mod synth. Cool shit that Ryan, before I got there, thought through like the parameters he wanted us to operate within. Like he'd already made the playground. You know what I mean? Like so he knew which synthesizer. He knew he wanted to route that into the modular synth rig. He had drum loops ready to go for us to jam against. He knew like acoustic guitar to start with. Because like Slack wasn't a part of those initial jams. He came in after, and then he blessed the joints with his vibes.
Yeah.
Who was playing guitar at first?
Like when we first did those jams, it was just Justin.
Right.
It was just
when we did the show at that first.
Oh, Slack did the show. With all three?
With all three. Yeah, he did. That's right.
Yeah. So ever since we started playing as a band, Slack's been the guy. The way I met Slack, like Ryan was like, yo, this is my second trip to Minneapolis after we got the skeletons of all the songs. And then Ryan's like, yo, this is guitars you gotta meet. Ryan's like, we already got like most of the substance. So I was like, I don't know. But he was like, nah, trust me.
Yeah.
And Flat came through that night. This was like a month after the first trip. And song after song, the dude just like laid down the most magical shit. Almost all that, like, Ryan probably ran him for like 3 takes and he obviously guided him, but yeah, man, it was like bam, 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 bam. And then the last thing we did was Ryan was like, yo, you guys should just do a duo jam, just me and him. Because he'd already laced all the other songs that we had kind of like built out. And you can hear in the recording where I kind of say, because Saka was taking a second to start, like, yo, just start with that chord.
Yeah.
He strums one chord and then we go. And then we jam on a whole song for 5 minutes.
Jeez.
And that came along. And like that whole, the guitar on the final version is that first take he did. And my vocals, we did like the whole thing in one flow. I just had to go in and change my gibberish to lyrics.
Yeah.
But that was like, that song occurred in one take the first time we hit it. I think we have some video of that shit. Yeah.
You almost hit that pun.
Huh?
Okay, so do you see the song almost came along?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy. Wait, so in a way, Ryan's EP technically on this, right?
Producer, executive producer, yeah.
So, but in a way, like, he's kind of the curator of the rooms and kind of made sure everything was efficient and the way you like did the workflow essentially.
That, and also like literally like what the colors we were gonna play with, like he, you know what I mean, like, because he knew, like, I remember the end of the first trip, the third day, he kind of like put together the whole album order.
Yeah.
And that album order that he put together on that night after that 30-day jam vibes, that's more or less what the album order ended up being for the final track list.
But was that experience different than how you're used to making music?
Hell yeah. I mean, like, I would say this is the first real album I've made.
Yeah.
I've made other projects before.
Well, Entropy is like your only public.
Yeah, and even that's like fully self-produced. And I'm really glad I made that. I really like parts of that record. But, you know, it felt like I was still developing and understanding the intricacies and subtleties of making music. How to, like, one of my favorite things about this album is, like, people can move to it.
Yeah.
You know, there's songs like, once the groove settles in, that's the groove that locks in for a minute, so people can find their pace with it and start moving. The music I used to make before was like very, like, beats would shift a lot, a little bit more just like, I called it experimental, but also just like less refined.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
You feel like you got away with it a little bit? You know?
No, I just didn't know what else to do, I think. You know what I mean? So it wasn't like a decision I made. It was based off of kind of the constraint of ability.
Yeah.
Now that I've made this, you know, and like really been in the weeds with this album, I've taken in a whole lot of information.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, even the last album, like you're saying, it's very experimental. It's very like, it feels like it captures what you're really good at, which is like the ragams and like kind of like the complex sounds.
Yeah.
And it sticks it out. But
it also, like, one thing I realized when I make music completely on my own,
yeah,
it's hard for me to keep it simple.
Mm-hmm.
And for my voice and like the kind of songs that I can write, it doesn't require like a ton. Yeah. More than anything else, I think I got to stay out of my own way, you know, sonically, like let the voice really breathe. And that was what was so fire about this process. I didn't think about the production and shit. So because of that.
Was there any ego in terms of like self-production you had to let go, or were you actually just excited to work with someone and get it going?
It wasn't like excited or ego. I just like, the process just seized me, man. Like it was like I just surrendered to it. Yeah. And like I said, I've never worked with someone at this capacity in a way that we're actually like yielding the results. Yeah. But with him, I was like, all right.
I'm assuming you're used to like collaboration in the context of like Indian language music, right?
Yeah, but that music, like, I love those songs very deeply. Yeah. But I don't write on this, so like I'm hired to sing them. Yeah. So there's like, it doesn't have my creative. In a way it does, but in terms of direct creative DNA and like contribution, it's not there. Mm-hmm. I'm hired to bring those songs to life by the way I vocalize them. Yeah. Whereas with this, when you're making your own music, writing your own lyrics, telling your own story and shit, like you can tend to get territorial or precious about things because you're like, no, this is my art, and like that was what I was able to let go of. Just like preciousness with art is probably like the most destructive shit.
Oh my gosh.
You know what I mean? Like, and that's when you have to like let go of the ego, because that's the shit that tells you, no, this is like so meaningful, and it is, but it's like if you're thinking that while you're making it, then you're not making your shit. You're thinking about making it. You know.
There's with the Indian language music, like you're saying, like you're being hired to use your vocals and like bring your voice to it.
Yeah.
When it achieves a lot of success, is there any form of imposter syndrome that comes from it because it's not as precious, or is it just like, no, my voice is just fucking fire, like I get it?
No, never. I'm trying to think if I had like imposter syndrome as such ever.
Really?
I'm trying to think. Like I've had insecurities for sure, but whether it was imposter syndrome or not, I had a conversation with someone about this kind of recently. I've felt many times like, oh, I don't belong in this place.
Yeah.
Or like, if I feel like I don't necessarily belong in this place, but then the thought kind of ends there, whereas like, oh, I'm not good enough doesn't necessarily enter my head.
That's a superpower. I feel like, for me at least, most people I've ever met has like a form of it. Even
I felt it with Carnatic music before.
Really?
Yeah, because like it's something I've been doing from such a young age, and I've had like a real journey with it. Where like the first 15 years of my life, I thought I was like God's gift. You know what I mean? And I thought like so highly of myself because I was praised everywhere I went. Yeah. And then you have a coming down from that.
Yeah. Oh, so it's during that come down, like.
So I came down from it, and the thing about Carnatic music is like, at a young age it can remain intuitive. At some point, because it's so complex, you have to break it down into like pieces that you can logically understand and make sense of and map out. Yeah. Especially with like improvising with ragas and the rhythmic structures and shit like that. So it cannot remain intuitive because at some point you won't have a framework to fall back on. So that's when I had my point of disillusionment, when it was time for me to get down to like doing the work in terms of like really understanding the form, not just doing the work as like being passionate about it and doing it when I felt inspired, but like daily grind shit. So like when that happened, I had imposter syndrome in Carnatic music for a while.
Because now you're learning to be disciplined rather than just like.
Well, it took me a second to understand that as a process, because that's not been my vibe since I was a kid. I was always about just like off the cuff, intuitively like really knowing that I was fire, but I never was about like the rigor of daily work. I was lazy in that way. But once I had this like hit this point of like the glacier was too big and I couldn't see it with Carnatic music, I either had like the option of giving up on it completely or like really starting to do the work. So I just started doing the work.
Is there a spirituality mixed into it at all, or is it?
Of course, it's everything. It's not mixed in. It is the thing.
Yeah.
You know.
So as a kid, when you're doing the off the cuff stuff,
that's what gave me a firm belief in like a divine power. Was like the fact that I could tap into these things and feel these moments of like literally felt like I was fucking flying or like elevated off the ground, you know, just like that deep vibrational like force. Yeah. I resonate with that in fleeting moments. I can just recall like a couple of them, you know, but it's happened over the years.
How young was it when it was your first time?
The first time I was conscious of it was probably like 5 or 6, maybe 7. Maybe like around then.
That's wild.
Yeah, those moments, man, where it's like, especially like, the thing I like on the very basic level, the thing I love about Carnatic music is, you know, the drone, like the tambura sound? Yeah. Like, it's very, it really lends itself to another tone matching it, and when they resonate together, it like does that thing where your whole body vibrates and resonates and feels like you're buzzing. And then that, in turn, what I feel like is like, really music when it fucking hits is like when those resonances also like, you know, physically just think about it like physics or chemistry, like these are just like people within their bodies, you know, when you get chills or whatever, if those same resonances happen across a whole space and everyone is, the source point is the same and consistent, you know.
Have you talked about that with like your mom and anyone who taught you about like
Me and my mom have talked about the feeling of the magic. We haven't necessarily talked about like why, but we talked about like okay, one of her favorite musicians of all time is Carnatic vocalist. Her name is Emma Subbulakshmi, and she's probably like the Carnatic musician. She's passed away now. She was like the previous generations, but she had the deepest kind of like reach and resonance with audiences. She's probably the person that's taken Carnatic music the farthest outside of like the group of people that regularly listen to it, and within the group of people that regularly listen to it is like, you know, legend. But her divinity and her singing, there was something about it that made people forget themselves, you know what I mean? And so like my mom would talk about her a lot. And we've just had it's not just Carnatic music, anything. Like there's certain songs, you know, that just like,
good idea.
And we've talked about that, like the magic of it. Like when that magic happens, the kind of effect it can have on people, or like the effect it's had on her.
Yeah.
You know?
5 years old though. 5, 6 years old is like a really weird time. Not weird, but like early time to kind of be conscious of
I wasn't necessarily
you know?
conscious of it though. It was like I knew something happened.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is weird. I haven't thought about that.
Because I think
like that.
Because
like at the same time you're also learning to be a social creature in the world and shit, and you're also like having an experience like this.
Well, you're interacting with other 5 and 6 year olds, and meanwhile you felt.
Yeah, but let's also. I was also like an immature little kid. You know what I mean? Like, so there was definitely like this was just an aspect. But I think like one thing I've always recognized about myself, there's always been like a certain like melancholy or like yearning maybe.
Yeah.
You know.
Where do you think that comes from?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm not sure. That's the quest. That's like, I think now like what I've become aware of it every time I'm on stage or making music, like the real search is for some sort of like a universal truth. You know what I mean? Or truths.
Do you think a part of it is like existentialism in a way?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So yes. Like what? Not only existentialism though. So not only like what is my place in the world, but like how does the universe move and why? You know, not like my latest shit is trying to like make this less about myself.
Yeah.
To myself, you know, like thinking about me a little bit less and just thinking about everything else.
Yeah.
It's a challenge though, especially being an artist, because we're naturally kind of like prone to, you know, dissecting ourselves and like thinking about ourselves, not necessarily being self-centered all the time, but having a certain fallacy that the world in a way revolves around one person or whatever. Because, you know, you go on stage and there's thousands and thousands of people and there's all this stuff. But my latest has just been the discipline, or trying to keep the discipline of like, it's not the search is not about me.
Yeah.
It's, you know.
I mean, that's what happened. You have to inherently dissect yourself so much to
get to that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's the part I think.
And I think actually, like in a very logical way, you hit a certain like, you do that self-reflection, introspection so frequently and deeply for a while, and then you hit a certain point where like, there's nothing more on this specific path. You got to take a different path to really kind of like dig deeper. You know, that's why I'm so glad we're on the road right now.
Yeah.
Like even like a day spent doing literally nothing.
Yeah.
I think like moving around, taking in new shit, and being present in new spaces. You about to take a shit? But yeah, man, like it's like you get the like being in the same place all the time is not the vibe. I think sometimes it's necessary to lock in and, you know, have a consistent whatever. But yeah, this movement allows me at this stage of my life to like put into execution or put into action that idea of being present. You know, like I don't have to be mulling over some shit in my brain right now. I could just be posted up here looking at shit and taking in information. And you can probably deriving joy from that in some way, you know?
you're kind of reaping the reward, I guess, of making an album now, right? You know?
Yeah, sure. The whole process of making the album has kind of been an exercise in this presence, you know what I mean? Like, different versions of it. Like, making this album was the first time I was talking about being, like, you know, I write these notes and put them up on Instagram a lot. For so many of them, before making that album, or maybe even a little bit after I started, but, like, so much of it I'm talking about presence.
Yeah.
Wanting to be present. And then this album was the first practice of that. Like, that creative wave that hit was so strong that I didn't have to, like, dig for lyrics and think on shit for days. Certain songs, like that song Quiet Storm, is so different in its structure. It's all based off of, again, that the whole melody was basically born out of the jam from the first 3 days. But yeah, like, so, you know, some of it was a daily grind. It was almost like a job. Wake up, go drink some coffee, go sit at the table, and just start letting the shit kind of come to me.
How intentional was the theme of the album?
It was all subconscious, man. Like, none of it was thought out as such. It was like literally every day, every part of the experience felt like just channeling. Waking up, just like being open to some force. I just call it God, divine, whatever. Just like letting that like flow through and work through me. So like there was never a point in time where I was like, oh, this song, like for example, the intro, Most High.
Yeah.
The opening lyrics to that is, "This will be a place for all."
Yeah.
And that, when we made that idea in the studio, just felt like this grand statement, right? And again, it was gibberish when we first started it. I rarely have lyrics like freestyle. I have freestyle melodies pretty quick, but lyrics don't come as fast. But I have syllables and shit. So, I was visiting LA for like a day trip or some shit.
Yeah.
I was posted up at Intelligentsia.
Yeah.
Coffee in Silver Lake. And I used to be crashing on someone's couch there around like 2013, 14, 15-ish. So I used to go to that Intelligentsia damn near every day, but being like not comfortable, you know what I mean? Like, but I was posted up there, felt like a weird kind of throwback, and those lyrics just kind of, I was listening to the joint on the headphones and it just kind of came to me. So that was kind of like the process, letting the shit hit me when it did. And the concept is just me.
Yeah. Do you
know?
think it was a snapshot of exactly what you were going through at the time?
No, not necessarily, because like some of it was a snapshot. I did this interview recently where this dude said like, picking from the museum of my past.
Wow.
Which is a really cool way to put it. Yeah, shout out that dude. So some of it was that, like examining parts of my past. Some of it was triggered by things that were happening, like some very like heated conversations I had with loved ones during that time. And then the same night I'd like write, you know what I mean? And it would like, something would burst open within me and pour out.
Wow.
Not necessarily a direct, not related to like what that conversation was before even sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes it would, like the song would be about something else completely, but the valve was open, you know what I mean?